Brick. He's a big, bulky, and tanky fighter. He's an absolute unit who usually brings nothing to a gunfight except for his fists, and always is the man to walk away afterwards. He is, for lack of better terminology, the subject of today's video. But there's a lot more to Brick than might meet the eye, and a lot more than what we see in game. And to illustrate this, we have to first look at his inspiration. He is actually created to be the Doom guy of the Borderlands universe, and I mean this in very literal terms. He handles most problems with his bare hands because that's what, A, he enjoys most. He is built like an absolute tank after all. But more than that, he is also driven, admittedly, by rage, anger. Because that's who he is. That's what he's always been driven by. But today, in a part, I want to actually look back at something that it hasn't probably seen the light of day since probably 2009, if I'm being honest. And that is the Borderlands comic book. See, the Borderlands Origins comic came out in 2009 as an additional piece of information to provide more insight onto each of the characters. And well, 3 of the 4 more or less got, you're a siren, you're trying to figure out what you're aiming for, what the role of the sirens are in the universe. You're a hunter, okay, cool, you lost a friend. Oh, you were betrayed by your commanding officer. Bricks is actually rather unique and well handled in my opinion. Now, let me be honest, Brick says maybe 2 sentences in the entire comic book. But, putting it out bluntly, he was part of a group of bandits on his home world. And his goal was effectively to loot, sell, get money. That was his whole shtick. And he existed as part of this bandit group for a number of years. However, one night, the leader of the Banditos crew that he was with ended up kidnapping children. And the instant that children were involved, he laid down his arms and stopped fighting. He stopped getting involved in what was going on around him and instead was taken prisoner by the people of the town, hoping to be used as a bargaining chip to get their kids back. Around midnight, roughly speaking, Brick stood up, punched his way through a solid cell, probably brick for being honest, and was confronted by one of the townsfolk who said, you aren't leaving, and Brick, saying probably his first sentence the entire comic, says, try to stop me. Where are you planning on going out there? He says, to get your kids. Nothing serious, but carrying a lot of weight. The remainder of the comic book is effectively him breaking into the very group of bandits that he was with prior to this whole thing breaking out, and fighting back against them. He ended up defeating every single one of those bandits, and more so brought every single one of those kids home safely. Now this to me is actually probably one of the most telling pieces about Brick as a character. He is an incredibly strong individual. He might have questionable morals. He was an individual who was with a bandit group to begin with. But I also believe that his reaction of children shouldn't be involved, that was the line he would not cross. And personally speaking, I think that makes him more relatable as a character for me, as that truthfully showcases that he's not the bad guy he never was. He's probably misunderstood, but he's not bad. And that's what I want to kind of line up here. Because at the end of the comic book, all the kids are smiling and laughing at how ridiculously strong Brick is. And he carried one of them halfway across the desert because he could. And he was somebody who was kind enough to help these kids. And the one actually gave him a pet. A dog, specifically. This dog he named Priscilla. Priscilla was meant to be a companion of Brick's. And we know that it was a companion, but not for how long. And so, Priscilla, even in Brick's current iteration, his current design, is actually showcased in his design, with the lucky paw of Priscilla being around Brick's neck. Now, people might ask, well, how long did he have Priscilla? How long was this a part of him? We don't necessarily know. And I'd love to give a more apt statement of that. We know that by the end of Borderlands, I believe it's Borderlands 3, he's about 35 years old. And I can guesstimate the initial story of the Borderlands comic being around the time of him being about 22, based on the age of Tiny Tina as she grew up to Borderlands 3. This is conjecture, this is not actually supported by anything, this is just my understanding of time as a result of each game being further in time than the one before it, barring the pre-sequel. And so, Brick as a character, I think, actually is one of the more interesting for this. But where do we go from here? We're 7 minutes in, we've already talked about the comic book. And I mentioned a connection between him and the Doom guy from Doom specifically. Comparisons are pretty shallow at best. He was an individual who fought against a, shall we say, a superior officer, or someone who was supposed to be a individual in power. And he had a pet. Now, in the case of Doom Guy, his was a rabbit. In the case of Brick, it just so happens to be a dog. What's interesting about Brick over the course of the Borderlands franchise is that in Borderlands 1, he has one paw. Borderlands 2, he has a second. The second dog paw comes from his second dog, Dusty, which he had received after the main story of 1, but before 2. And again, he treats it like a badge of honor, a companion who was with him through thick and thin. But what I think makes Rick better than, shall we say, the other characters is that his motivation is maybe not as cut and dry as the others. If you look at the characters in Borderlands 1 and 2, you have some characters that have very straightforward motivations, like Mordecai, who wanted to effectively avenge his friend who had passed as a result of someone killing him. You have another character, like Roland, who wanted to fight back against his old CO. And Lilith, as I said, wanted to find out more about the Sirens. Brick, at least in what I can assume to be early material for the franchise, was said to be looking for his sister. Whether or not that's still the case or remained the case in the main game, I can't say. That's just what Google said. But what I can offer from that is that theoretically they were all looking for the same person, Commandant Steele. Now, the Commandant shows up twice, a few times actually, mostly just as you are invading in the political situation of the Borderlands, the whole of Pandora. This planet belongs to the Atlas Corporation, yada yada yada. The thing is that Roland was a former Atlas soldier. Roland's CEO was Commandant Steele. And we can take that a step further. The individual who killed Mordecai's friend was Commandant Steele. And the individual who has more information regarding the Sirens as a whole was Commandant Steele. And so, in a way, I think that they were trying to tie Brick back to Steele in another way, that it was a sibling rivalry or something of that nature that drew him back to the Borderlands. Whatever your personal opinion of it is, it can't be understated that Brick ended up on Pandora for a reason. If I'm being honest, I believe it's probably treasure hunters or the ability to just exist as himself, fight back against oppression because that's who he is. And he does so, as I said prior, with nothing but his two hands. I suppose he does bring cannons to a gunfight, but regardless, those cannons are weapons that should never have to be reloaded. I think that's one of the beautiful things about this character is he can go through and do everything that he so desires without the use of excessive force. But I suppose the question becomes, what's the goal? And right now I can say outright, the goal of beating this right now, of playing this, is to attempt to see just how far we can take Borderlands without the use of a single gun. Now, there are a couple missions in Borderlands that I believe are going to be outright impossible. This being something like fighting Mothra, which, to my knowledge, never comes out of the sky. But for the majority of Borderlands, I believe it is possible to beat the game without the use of conventional weaponry or pulling a trigger at all. And I really want to test that theory, because I could very well be wrong. I've been wrong in the past. I thought that there was nothing that was stopping me from beating Titanfall 2 without firing a bullet as Pilot Cooper. And yet I ended up with 10 shots, 8 of which I believe were in the opening of the game. And so that makes sense. Every single game's gonna have something of that nature. So Borderlands having a little bit of a how far can we push it mentality, I look forward to it. And if I'm being honest, as long as Brick is leveled up enough, I don't foresee there being any enemy that can't be fought to a stalemate. At least, not completely. Now, I'll be honest, there are a few bosses and enemies that I'm wary of. For example, I know for a fact that I cannot defeat a few enemies as is. Number one, I will not be able to defeat Minac. Now, if you know who Minac is, great. If you don't, we'll get there. I will not be able to defeat Mothra, at least by my understanding of the situation. And I will not be fighting Cromorax at all. I think those 3 bosses are fair to state. All other enemies, all other bosses should be more than doable. And I think that's a fair statement to make. As long as they even come within range, they're fun. What makes these 3 enemies unique is that Mothrak doesn't come to the ground, and Minak doesn't have a weak point on the ground, and we already know that Chromarax doesn't have a weak point in range and can one-shot anybody. So, knowing that the three standard situations that I am expecting are impossible, all have very clear, concise reasons as to why they're impossible, I have no problem with that. But for now, we're not worried about Chromarax, we're worried about Scar. And Scar is actually one of those bosses that I want to be very clear about. It is an enemy that is a higher level, level 10-ish, and has to be fought more or less in 1 to 2 cycles. If you cannot defeat Scar before you fall, due to whatever reason, or before the end of your rampage is over, then you are pretty well hoopla. Because Scar will heal very quickly if you step away. Therefore, Scar must be fought in one burst. Scar also has a couple wonderful side abilities. You saw the slam of the front paws, which caused an explosion, can breathe acid, and can run as fast as a sprinting Vault Hunter. Meaning that you, the player, are going to have to run either way faster, way harder, or simply avoid getting into the circumstance where you have to avoid him at all. Standard habits of dipping in and out of combat to try to prevent your opponent from getting you are not going to work on this one. And that's wonderful, because it means that we only have to worry about one thing: offense. Because for Brick at the moment, the best defense is a good offense. Your enemy can't hurt you if there's no enemy to hurt you with. It's like, what is it? There is two kinds of stealth. There is the rogue style stealth, and there is more aggressive stealth. They can't scream for help if there's nobody left to see you, right? That's the way I view it. Oh, that's bad. That is really bad. So, badasses in this run are going to be very much a concern for the duration of the run. It is because badass enemies usually have about double to triple the health, and can dish out bare minimum double to triple the damage. So while I could, handle a level 9 adult in one run, there is going to be many occasions where I'm not going to be able to defeat a badass in one run. One batch of the Berserk mode. And I'm going to have to resort to running away and pulling the Joestar technique. Because, let's be real, I don't really have a whole lot of options aside from run right now. And that's actually one of the beautiful things about this particular run. It is not a all-out aggressive run. It is deal damage while you can, and get the heck out of there when you can. It is about managing resources more than anything. Now, my resources are incredibly limited. It is effectively shield health and berserk mode. But regardless, they're resources nonetheless. And he's stuck. Cool. Well, I guess that means one less thing for me to worry about. There are going to be numerous occasions where enemies are going to get stuck on geometry or lose their tracking, due to where they end up in combat. This is an unfortunate side effect of This is Borderlands, and that's just how the game is. Unfortunately, Borderlands has a few minor glitches. or oversights, shall we say. And one of them is the fact that it was designed from the ground up with multiplayer in mind. Now, multiplayer in mind is a good thing, especially the couch co-op side. Online co-op was in mind when it was created. So Borderlands has a lot going for it in that regard. But what makes it less than stellar, less than ideal, is the fact that Borderlands has always had that's actually a really cool how it changes the design behind it. Sorry, squirrel moment. Borderlands has always had very shaky, not so great servers for the multiplayer. And as such, couch co-op has always been my go-to. But every single player is going to have something that they gravitate towards more than others. And what I think makes Borderlands more unique and enjoyable is the fact that there's something for everybody. I remember my first playthrough of Borderlands 2. I was a zero main. And the reason why I was a zero main was because at that point in time, I had not finished a shooter in a decade. And I don't know about many people out there, but that's usually a pretty good sign that I'm not going to be good at it. And so, I picked up the game thinking, cool, let's see what happens. Let's go with a sniper, because then I won't have to get up close and personal with any enemies. And I hated it. Mordecai and Zero being snipers in the multiplayer, I always found that my shots missed even when they were lined up perfectly. And so I ended up kind of frustrated with the game and wanting to change my characters rather early and rather late into it. My first successful run of 2 ended up being a Zero run. But ironically, it was a Zero designed around Brick, if you will. A lot of my skills were redistributed to be more about short bursts of incredibly high close-range output, mixed with bursts of, okay, I'm done, I'm stepping back, I'm good. Please don't come anywhere near me. And so, ironically, Zero and his unseen skill tree actually meshes quite well with Brick's mentality in a weaponless run. But you could also make the argument that Zero is more like Mordecai, or more like Lilith, because he also specializes in long and short range weapons, high speed, high output opponent character, and has very close and very long range attacks. But that gets me thinking, who else would fit into the Brick mentality? Well, you have Krieg, effectively the Psycho. And no, I do not like saying it, but effectively Krieg is a close-range specialist with the buzzsaw, and focuses actually on low-health runs. He is a very high-output character, and one that actually has some really unique abilities. But we could also take it a step further. You have Maya, who is an evolution of a trap character. A character that aims to immobilize and slow down their opponents over time. Okay, we have our first flame-resistant shield. Which is absolutely glorious for me, because I'm going to need... No, wait. Creates a burst of fire, which means it is a Nova shield. Novas are going to be a bread and butter tool, assuming that I can actually get close. So we'll keep that in our back pocket for later. But you also have Maya, who is a trap character. You have Aston, who is very much just a straight-up evolution of Roland's kit. And you have the Gunzerker, who is an evolution of Brick in that he is very much a tank character. but he has some of the highest output of damage in the game while gun-zerking. So, who's the best Vault Hunter? Well, the answer is there isn't one. Every Vault Hunter in the franchise has something unique that makes them unique. Something that pushes them to the forefront, that makes them completely and totally different from anything that came before or after. And so, Brick being bluntly the tank and brawler type character is both the most simplistic and least simplistic that it will ever be, because every other character evolves it, but they tweak it in a way that makes him still stand out as the brawler. Anywho, we are officially done in Skag Gully. Hooray! All 4 main missions of this area are completed, which means from here on out, we are going to be in and around the various regions of the arid Badlands. Before we get too far into that, let's take a trip down to TK. TK Baja has a couple things for us. Number one, he's going to have, I believe, a sniper and a shotgun. And we're going to pass them in, get our experience points, and then give him his weapons back because we don't want them. Something about not having any ammunition for anything, not picking it up. I don't know. It's all confusing. Who minds, right? And while we're invested in this, we should also take a bit of a moment to talk about the next boss. Now, if you've played the game at all, you know that the second main boss of the game, not skippable, not avoidable boss, is Bonehead. Well, probably avoidable in some capacity. But Bonehead is your first or second major boss. And he, unlike a lot of characters, can't be avoided. Bonehead has a few things going for him. First and foremost, he is the first major boss that also has, shall we say, higher output in the form of additional banditos in the battle itself. This is important, because it means that while other bosses we fought thus far, Scar and Ninetoes, had additional enemies in the arena, in the form of Digit and Pinky for Ninetoes, and the other Skags in the arena for Scar, Bonehead has bandits. Bandits mean that we are going to be constantly taking damage for the duration of the battle, no matter what we do. And so, the approach has to be swift and hit hard. The easiest way to hit this particular setup is effectively to come at it from a hidey hole, or give ourselves a little bit more room to breathe. Option A is hide behind the map, or hide behind his arena, pop out, do a little bit of damage, go back into hiding. And this option is reasonable. Oh my god. That's... okay, that makes sense. So, in Borderlands 1, 2, etc., Brick is constantly given wanted posters, partially for dismemberment. I can see why. That was an oops. But, hey, I mean, that guy was disarmed, right? That's all we did. We just disarmed him. Okay, really? Yeah, and he's disarmed too. Fantastic. Why? Just why? Oh, well. Yeah, Brick is not the person you want to go visit right now, especially because he's disarming literally everybody. Seriously, what is up with that? Anywho. So, two options are effectively get behind him, hit hard and fast, or, better yet, thin out the enemies before we battle him directly. These two options are half and half. you gotta do a little bit of both. Now, the other issue we're gonna have is that Bonehead has a few notable situations that make him completely unique and something that I had never known about until now. Bonehead has completely unique animations for him when you get in close. Something that will become very apparent in a couple moments here. He will attempt to headbutt you. As a result of he has the skull on his head. This effectively will increase the amount of output that he has, making him very much an enemy that you can fight, but not one that is easy to fight up close. Great. So, what's the mark? What's the move? Theoretically, I could rush in with and just fight them back. At this moment, I don't think that's the safe option. Option B is to wait for my health and try again. But we're gonna end up with the situation of no matter what I do, I'm gonna end up falling in this battle. So I guess wait for Berserk mode, head out, blast a couple enemies, and then hope that things work out. Anyway, rushing in, and we're gonna go after the little guys first because we're gonna thin out the herd a little bit. This could be a good or bad thing depending on how we look at it. It reduces the likelihood that I'm going to be able to get back up after falling. And I am absolutely nowhere near Bonehead, so we're just going to take the L. But, wait, what? I still have the speed of the... Okay. So I still have the Berserk mode speed? Okay, but it goes away after I try to hit something. Good to know. Interesting little glitch. I've never seen that before. I'm sure we'll find more little things as time goes on. Okay. Oh, well, the good news is it took care of his headache. And you... I don't even know what to say. He had a headache too. I'm just helping people, I swear. It's just helping people through their concussions. You know what? I gotta stop staring at that and just deal with what's coming up. Because I have only a couple more moments to really dig into this. And with the only person left in the arena being Bonehead, it's going to be all about pushing him to his absolute limits. Now, there is a little bit of a sweet spot where he's doing his headbutting, but he can't actually do any damage to me. Unfortunately, I seem to not be able to hit that sweet spot very easily. And also, I'm down. Good news is Bonehead is basically defeated, so we're just going to turn around and beat him up one more time. But this, as the second boss, kind of leaves a lot to be desired. Knowing full well that there's not much I can do at this moment to prevent it aside from just power grinding, means I'm going to be spending a lot of time focusing on side missions, simply to stay ahead of the difficulty curve as much as possible. Good and bad. But that's all there is to it, right? Just stay ahead. Keep fighting enemies as they come up because that's all you can do. Okay, the Bone Shredder is Okay, really? I was hoping that I was going to be able to beat him before that happened. But learn your lesson. Don't rush in without the use of the... without the Berserk mode active, and you should be fine, right? That's a teachable moment. So, I suppose the real question is, knowing that Bonehead is, and has been, as difficult as it has been, what's the next, I suppose, best option? And reality is, I have no idea. But be it that as it may, regardless of what the option is, next week we're going to be tackling another major area. And specifically, we're going to be doing a lot of the side missions in and around the arid Badlands, and hopefully tackling the shock crystal harvest. But let me know down below if you think this is possible, if there's anything I may have overlooked as far as a potential challenge, and add a little bit more to Brick's backstory if you know anything more, because truthfully, I'd love to hear it. Until next time, we're gonna, excuse me, stop coming in here. It's not good for you. It's not healthy for you guys. Stop it. Okay, I brought a hammer to a knife fight. Anyways, let me know down below. While you're there, drop a like, leave a subscribe, and we'll catch you next week. Until then, have a good one.